Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And today I'm going to be making a creamy chicken lasagna. Now this is a recipe I'm just making up on the fly and decided to go ahead and take you along for the ride with this one. Now what I have is some leftover chicken from one that I roasted on our wood stove the other night. And as I like to do, even though it's just the two of us, I will roast up a whole chicken and then use the parts to make several different meals along the way. So this video will be going into my how to make the most of leftovers video series. Let's get started and we'll see how it turns out. All right, what I'm starting with is some chopped up garlic. This is the fermented garlic from my garden. Some chopped up onion, about maybe about 3/4 of a cup. I don't measure, I just kind of eyeball things. Some green pepper and some tomato. So what I'm going to do is put in my pan about a tablespoon or so of some grass-fed butter. You can use coconut oil or any other kind of oil you would prefer to use, maybe avocado oil. But for this type of thing, I know I'm making it up as on the fly, but I kind of know where I'm going with this. I prefer to use butter, and I'll explain that in a minute. Okay, so we're gonna get a big blob of butter in there, and I'll show you how much I put in. That's definitely more than a tablespoon. That's more like 2 tablespoons at least. And then I'm only going to put in the sliced garlic, green peppers, and onions to start with. Not putting the tomatoes in there yet. And I'm going to go put my pan on the wood stove and let these saute and get a little softened, and then I'll be back when these are ready for the next step. All right, while my vegetables are getting soft and I'm sauteing a bit there and butter, I'm going to go ahead and show you the next thing I'm going to do, and that is to make the sauce. Now basically what I'm doing is more of a chicken fettuccine lasagna. And so I want my sauce, instead of doing a red tomato sauce like you would for a typical lasagna, I'm doing this more of a fettuccine type sauce. So again, I don't use measurements, I just kind of make things up as I go. But what I'm starting with is 1 cup of our some whole goat's milk. This is the goat milk we get from a friend who just is very generous, and we appreciate her very much, and she gives us goat milk every week. And so just starting with, well, approximately a cup, because I'll be adding more milk to this later. I just don't want to get this too full because of the things I have to add in. So I'm going to put in about a teaspoon of the red mineral salt. And I'm going to show this again for those who've not seen it. I'm hoping the light will pick it up. You should be able to see some color in there. It's kind of beige and has little flecks of dark brown and kind of a reddish tone in there. And those are the minerals and stuff that are in the salt. Sometimes you'll find when you're eating the salt, you might kind of get a hard crunch. Well, don't worry about it. That's just part of the minerals. It's really, really healthy for you. If you're going to eat salt, it should be a good, healthy sea salt of some kind. Now, or, you know, natural salt that hasn't been totally stripped of all the things that are good like you would typically find in table salt. Now, one salt I always forget to mention is the Celtic sea salt. That's the gray one, and it looks very moist when you see it. I like to use that one a lot for my canning stuff. Anything I'm going to add salt to when I'm canning, like my potatoes and the green beans and whatever else. That's what I use that the Celtic sea salt for, but it is also very high in really great minerals. And I'm going to throw in about a tablespoon of black pepper. Now you're going to have to do that however you want, because typically I also like to add red pepper to this. I'm going to be adding a good handful, which is probably a couple of tablespoons, of my dehydrated mixed greens blend, all stuff from my garden, including grape leaves and stinging nettle and strawberry leaves and kale and all kinds of great stuff that's just really good for you. And this is just one way we can get the good nutrients into our diet year-round. All right, and then for an Italian dish, you gotta have some basil. So at least, I say at least a tablespoon. Same thing with your oregano. This is all homegrown. And I always like, even though I'm using some of my garden garlic, I still always like to add the granulated garlic. This is the Kirkland brand. I get it from Costco. But I'll still link to it below on Amazon, but you will get a better price on Costco. Even if you go to Costco.com, you'll still get a better price there. And then just a little bit of rosemary. Not too much. You don't want to go too strong on your rosemary. All right, now let's mix that around in there a little bit. I like to let this stuff kind of soak and really soak up the liquid there. Then the other thing you're going to want to add to your milk base is a couple tablespoons of some kind of thickener. Now, I prefer to use either arrowroot powder or tapioca starch. I actually don't remember which one this is because I use them both. To me, I don't see any difference in how they work, and sometimes I just mix them together in the same jar. So I'm going to put in about 2 tablespoons of this. And you can, depending on how much you're using, if you're making a lot, you may even want to put in a whole 1/4 cup. And then blend that in really good until it's very smooth. And if you're using, if you're using another type of thickener like rice flour is also very good. I would say if you're making up to 4 cups of your sauce altogether, at least a 1/4 cup of your rice flour. But also keep in mind that if you're using all these dried herbs and greens and stuff like that in there, they will also soak up some of the excess moisture. Because you're going to want a somewhat thick sauce. And you can always thin it out with more milk, or mix a little bit of milk and some more of your thickener in a small cup and add it to it as it's cooking if it looks like it's not quite getting thick enough. You just want to make sure you always blend your thickener with your cold milk or liquid, whatever it is you're using, before you cook it, because it'll clump up and separate if you try to do it separately. That applies to any kind of gravies and stuff that you're doing. Okay, so I'm going to go check on my vegetables, and then I'll be back when I'm ready for the next step. All right, I just remembered something, and so I brought my vegetables in, even though they're not quite ready yet, and that is, do you remember when I was making the homemade apple wine? And this is just made with organic sugar, filtered rainwater, and apples, and then my homemade fermentation starter. And I don't remember what video I talked about that, but I haven't shown how I make wine yet. And the only reason I got back into making wine is not because I drink it, because we don't do alcohol as far as drinking it, for whether it be just for enjoyment or whatever. I'm making it for other purposes, and one of those is for cooking, because if you're concerned about alcohol, when it comes to cooking with it, a lot of people probably don't realize that. Like when I did my extract video, if you're using the extract and you're cooking with it, the alcohol is going to cook off. So you're not going to get any of the negative side effects of, from alcohol. And besides, with extracts, you're using such a small amount. Even if you're putting in something you're not going to cook, it's not going to make that much of a difference. But that is also part of the reason why I dilute it halfway with the glycerin, so I can get a good extract because of the alcohol, and then the glycerin dilutes it and adds a nice flavor. So anyway, I'm going to put in, did you hear that? I'm going to put in, maybe about a 1/4 cup tops of my homemade apple wine into this, and then I'm going to go ahead and further cook it, because the thing about your wine is that when you're cooking with it, it's going to add a distinct flavor that makes it either very French tasting or very Italian tasting. Adding the wine to your water when you're cooking noodles gives the noodles a really awesome flavor. But again, you're not going to get any of the negative side effects of the alcohol, because that part is all cooked out. Okay, so now I'm going to go put this back on the wood stove and let the vegetables finish cooking, and then for reals, I'll be back for the next step. My vegetables are softened somewhat. I'm not trying to get them very soft because it's still got to cook some more. So you just want to get them so they're just a little bit, maybe, just a little bit tender. And you can see what they look like. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and add in my white sauce. And you know what? I have a really good feeling I'm going to need more garlic in there. Yes, definitely more garlic. So let's go ahead and put another tablespoon or so of the granulated garlic in there. And we're gonna mix that up. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to go ahead and add another cup of the milk. And this is going to be a full family size dish. At least it should feed about 4 to 6 people. And now I'm going to go ahead and put this back on my wood stove and let it thicken up. And then after that, I will move on to actually making the lasagna. Well, I'm in here at the wood stove, and you can see the dog is very happy in his spot. But anyway, for those of you who are new, I thought you might want to see what I've got going on here. So here's my pot of water that's perpetually here, mostly used for washing dishes. And then on those occasions when we're really trying to save hot water, we use this for bathing. Or if the power is out and we have no public power, then we can use that for bathing with. And so I always have a pot of hot water going on the wood stove. And then for the sauce, I've got it sitting right on the wood stove, because it's not a super hot fire, though I do want to keep a good eye on it and keep stirring it as it's thickening. And yeah, so, and then up here, turn this light on, you might be able to see a little bit better. I have this little strip light, LED lights, all battery operated, so that if I need a little more light on the subject, I just flip that on and I can kind of see what I'm doing. And yes, I need to do another thorough cleaning of the wood, this top of my wood stove, but since it's always hot, it's really kind of hard to do. This time of year, we've always got a fire going, so I just have to do the best I can with what I can, but if nothing else, anything that's on there, you know is sterilized. So, and then this is where I have little nails up here. This is where I keep my skillet handle covers, my pot handle covers. You know, this works good on our teapot and our coffee pot and all kinds of stuff. So that's what's going on in here, and when this is done, I'll take you back in the kitchen and we'll move on to making the lasagna. Okay, so I'm ready to start putting the lasagna together, and if I look just a little bit misty-eyed, it's because I just got done reading some really beautiful comments, trying to catch up in between on all the comments coming in, and I just want to take this time to thank all of our wonderful subscribers and followers and all their support and loving words and encouragement. They really do mean a lot to us, so thank you so much for that. All right, let's move on to the food. So the next step, what I did here was I put a little butter in the pan, melted it somewhat on the wood stove, and then kind of brushed it around. That's not super necessary, but I like to do that just in case. And then what I have here are some, I found that I actually prefer these noodles for lasagna, and I did a video on just like a traditional Italian lasagna, and in that one it was my first time trying the bow tie, and I'll put that video right up here. And I find I like these better than traditional lasagna noodles. They're easier to work with, and even just, I just like them better. Now the brand I prefer more than anything when it comes to pasta is the Montebello organic pastas, and they're sometimes really hard to find. They used to carry them for a somewhat decent price on Amazon, where you could buy a pack of 5. If I can find them, I'll post it below. But I've also been able to, when on those rare moments we get into town and get into the health food store in there, I have sometimes been able to find a good price on them there. Otherwise, my second favorite one are the organic ones that Costco carries. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and put about half of my noodles, well maybe not half because this is quite a bit of noodles. I just cooked up the whole package, because whatever I don't use in here, I'll find a use for. So about like that. Okay, and then what I have here, oh, let me go back to my sauce for a minute. So after you have your sauce done cooking, your gravy or whatever you want to call it, then you want to add about a cup of your Parmesan. You don't want to add it while you're cooking it, because your cheese is then going to separate, and you don't want that to happen. So just mix that in there while it's still nice and warm, and then set that aside. Okay, now back to this. What I have here is some ricotta cheese that I made with some organic whole milk. It's actually more like a farm cheese because I strained it out a little more than I meant to, and so it's a little harder than that, but it's the same, you know, it's really the same thing. So I'm just going to break that up in here, You can also use cottage cheese. I'm putting about a cup-ish, probably a little better than a cup. Then I like to put in an egg, and I'm going to do this twice. So I'm going to put one egg in each section that I do, okay, and just break that up in there. And then this then is going to be my second layer going right over the top of the noodles. Boy, look how dark. You can tell these are good farm eggs by the color of that. So we'll see how that looks in here. I usually, again, it's like everything else. I don't really measure. I just kind of wing it. So you just kind of want to sprinkle or spread that around on top of your noodles. Obviously, if you're using lasagna noodles, it's a little easier to spread stuff on them because they're so flat. But I still like the bow tie so much better for making lasagnas and things like this. Okay, and now I have some grated mozzarella. And let's just take, I'm going to probably use all of this. I think I have at least 2 cups. So we'll put about a cup of that on first. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and put my gravy, which I just realized I haven't added my chicken to yet. That's the other thing I got to do. But what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and cut some chicken up and sprinkle that over the top. Okay, so you're going to put about half of your sauce on there. This is going to make quite a bit. So let me go get my chicken. Okay, we'll go ahead and sprinkle some of these tomatoes right in there. And I'll probably cut up a little bit more tomato. And in fact, I'll just put all these right here, and then I'm going to cut up a little bit more tomato. Remember, I'm making this up on the fly. Okay, so I just cut up a bunch of chicken, and I'm just going to go ahead and sprinkle that right on top of that. And then the rest I'll go ahead and throw into the sauce where it should be. I tend to forget things when I'm trying to shoot things on videos, especially when I'm making it up as I go anyway. So I'm going to put a little more chicken in there, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the second layers. The last thing I'm going to do is sprinkle just a little bit of red pepper on top, partly to add a little more color, but also because I just like red pepper. And we'll add the last of these tomatoes. That will also add a little more color to it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bake this on my wood stove. I like to get my dinner done real early in the day when it's something like this. Then all I have to do is put it on the wood stove an hour or so before dinner time and just not worry about it. So I'm all done, ready to go. So this is why I prefer baking in these kind of pans around here, because not only because I do it on the wood stove, but I don't have to use tin foil or anything like that. I can just put my lid on there and cover it. I can stick it in the fridge until I'm ready to bake it. Either way, it's just ready to go. I just take it and stick it on there, leaving the lid on because you don't want it to dry out. Now, if you're doing this in a conventional oven, I would suggest about 350 for maybe a half an hour. And you just basically, all you're needing to do is just cook it through, let it heat, and get the cheeses and everything all melted and cooked in together. And that's all you need to do. So I think 350 for 20 to 30 minutes should be good enough. Since I'm not baking this until later in the day, and I do need to get my camera and all this stuff put away, I'll go ahead and take a couple of pictures of this meal when it's all done, and I'll put them right here. Tasted the sauce and it tastes really good, and so I'm feeling pretty good about this meal. We like lasagna and we like chicken fettuccine, so I'm thinking the two together should make a pretty yummy dish. Alright, well, I hope you enjoyed this video and that you learned something new, and just another way you can use up that leftover baked chicken. So thanks for watching, take care, and God bless.